Have you ever returned from a perfectly lovely social event, shut your front door, and felt an overwhelming, almost primal urge to just stare at a blank wall for about 3 hours?
Oh, absolutely. It is such a specific, heavy feeling, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you haven't run a marathon, you haven't been doing any heavy lifting.
Right. You've just been chatting.
Exactly. You've just been having a few drinks or a coffee while standing in a moderately crowded room, yet your bones feel heavy.
Yeah, your brain feels like it's been wrapped in thick cotton wool.
And the mere thought of your mobile phone vibrating makes you want to throw the device straight out the nearest window.
I know that exact feeling. It's rather intense.
It is. So if you are nodding along right now as you listen to this, I really need you to know that you are absolutely not alone.
Not at all. It's incredibly common.
Today's Deep Dive is dedicated entirely to decoding this exact, profoundly relatable phenomenon.
Which is something we desperately need to talk about more openly.
We do. We are looking at the actual hard science of the social battery. We're going to explore the biological realities of introversion and really get into the incredibly delicate art of protecting your own energy.
It really is a universal experience, isn't it? Yet, because it's so common, we rarely pause to understand the underlying mechanics of it.
We just sort of brush it off.
Exactly. We tend to just blame ourselves. We think, oh, I'm just being antisocial or I'm excessively tired today, without realizing there is a complex physiological process happening entirely beneath the surface.
And that is exactly what we are going to unravel today. We've pulled together a genuinely fascinating stack of sources to figure this out.
It's quite a diverse mix of materials, actually.
It really is. We are looking at everything from rigorous academic papers on emotional labor and Buddhist economics.
Which is a brilliant concept we will definitely get into.
Oh, absolutely. And we also have medical articles dissecting burnout and preventative health. Plus, we've got some deeply personal blog posts from Japanese creators.
Those are particularly insightful, to be honest.
They were. And finally, some highly specific Reddit threads where people are sharing their ground-level survival strategies.
Real-world tactics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why we crashed so spectacularly after socializing, we first need to define what exactly it is that we are depleting.
Right.
There seems to be a rather massive misunderstanding out there about what a social battery actually is.
There is, and it's a misunderstanding that is entirely ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous. That's a great B2 level word, meaning it's found absolutely everywhere.
Yes, exactly. It's everywhere, woven into corporate culture, pop psychology, and just how we talk to our friends at the pub.
So what exactly are we getting wrong?
Well, we constantly conflate the social battery with social anxiety. We blend the two concepts together as if they mean the exact same thing.
Which they don't.
Not at all. But we have a fascinating paper here from Universitas Dian Nusantara that establishes a crucial fundamental distinction.
Right.
They might sound similar in casual conversation, but physiologically and psychologically, they're completely different animals.
The paper makes it incredibly clear. It states that your social battery refers to your sheer capacity for social interaction.
Your capacity, yes. That's the key word.
Right. It is the actual finite amount of energy you hold for dealing with external social stimuli. It's essentially a fuel tank.
Spot on.
Social anxiety, on the other hand, is the feeling of distress, nervousness, or fear during those interactions.
What's fascinating here is that introverts are not necessarily socially awkward or anxious. That is perhaps the biggest myth we need to dismantle right now.
Oh, definitely. People just assume introvert means shy.
Exactly. But as the research points out, particularly referencing insights from a widely shared video by Raymond Chin, introverts can be highly effective communicators.
They can be brilliant public speakers.
Yes, and charismatic leaders and fantastic, engaging dinner party guests.
Yeah.
They are not sitting in the corner trembling with fear of other human beings.
Exactly. They aren't afraid of the interaction itself. They are simply managing a finite energy resource while they do it.
Precisely.
It makes me think about a car's fuel system.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, so social anxiety is like being absolutely terrified of driving.
Yeah.
You get behind the wheel, your heart rate spikes, you're gripping the steering wheel in sheer panic.
Yes, the act itself is the stressor.
But a low social battery, that's just a car with a perfectly calm, highly skilled driver. But the petrol tank is hitting empty.
I love that.
The driver isn't scared of the road at all. The car just physically cannot go any further until you pull over and fill it up.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. When introverts are engaging, they are functioning perfectly well. But the act of engaging draws heavily on their reserves.
It burns petrol.
Exactly. And after prolonged interactions, the paper notes, they are likely to withdraw. They might opt for solitude, listening to music, or writing.
Not because they're scared of the people they were just talking to.
Right, simply because the tank is empty.
Okay.
And we can look to the Medical News Today piece in our sources to identify exactly what that low fuel warning looks like in actual human beings.
It is intensely physical, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. It's not just a mood swing.
The article lists feeling tired, which is obvious, but it goes deeper into feeling stressed or suddenly becoming agitated and irritable for no apparent reason.
That sudden irritability is such a telltale sign.
Have you ever been mid-conversation at a pub, having a great time, and then suddenly, almost like a switch being flipped, you lose all interest in talking?
Yes, absolutely.
Your responses go from enthusiastic, full sentences to just nodding and murmuring, That is a classic, undeniable sign.
The verbal output just shuts down to conserve energy.
And finally, there's this desperate, overwhelming desire for a familiar, quiet space. You just want to magically teleport to your living room sofa.
So to the listener, I would ask you to reflect on your own daily environments for a moment. Which people, environments, or specific situations drain your tank the fastest?
That's a great question to ponder.
Is it large, unstructured groups? Is it loud, ambient noise? Is it the friction of making small talk with strangers at a networking event?
Yeah, that forced networking is brutal for the battery.
It really is. Identifying what drains your battery, what is pressing hardest on your accelerator, is the crucial first step to managing it.
But this naturally leads to a much bigger question. Why?
Right.
If we are all human beings, why does this capacity vary so wildly? Why do some people seem to have an endless fuel tank?
You know the type. They can be at a conference all day, go out for drinks all night, and wake up buzzing the next morning.
Exactly. Whilst others are completely drained after a 2-hour lunch. It doesn't seem fair, does it?
Well, it actually comes down to brain chemistry and genetics. It is not a character flaw. It is not a lack of willpower or social grace. It is pure biology.
And we have a phenomenal source for this, Masaji Kano's paper, A Business Model for Introverts. He dives deep into the actual neuroscience of arousal to explain this disparity.
Yes, he does. Kano points out that extroverts and introverts have entirely different baseline levels of neocortical arousal.
Okay, let's make sure we're clear on the terminology here because arousal can sometimes be confusing in casual conversation.
Fair point.
In a neurological context, we aren't talking about anything romantic. Arousal simply means how alert, stimulated, responsive, and active the brain is in its natural resting state.
Precisely. Now, the neocortex is the part of the brain involved in higher-order brain functions. Things like sensory perception, cognition, spatial reasoning, and conscious thought.
So it's the busy thinking part of the brain.
Exactly. Extroverts, generally speaking, have a remarkably low baseline of arousal in this area.
Low, really?
Yes. Their brains in a quiet room are actually slightly understimulated. Therefore, they actively need external stimuli to feel alert, engaged, and optimal.
Oh, I see.
They unconsciously seek out loud noises, fast-paced environments, busy crowds, and constant social friction because it brings their brain activity up to a comfortable, functional level.
Which perfectly explains why extroverts genuinely love a massive, chaotic party. It literally wakes their brains up. It feeds them.
Spot on. But introverts are built the exact opposite way.
They are. Introverts have a high baseline of neocortical arousal.
Exactly. Their brains are already buzzing with activity, complex thoughts, and sensory processing.
So they're already at an optimal or even slightly elevated level of stimulation, just sitting quietly by themselves in a silent room.
Yes, the baseline is already running high.
Let me test a metaphor on you here, going back to the car idea. It's like engine idle speed.
Okay, I like where this is going.
An extrovert's brain idles at, say, 500 RPM. If they don't step on the gas, if they don't go out and socialize, the engine might stall. They feel sluggish and bored.
That makes perfect sense.
An introvert's brain, however, is idling at 4,000 RPM. They're already running quite hot. So when you take that introvert and throw them into a loud, crowded pub with flashing lights and 10 overlapping conversations...
Too much.
Exactly. Stepping in the gas pushes the engine straight into the red line. The circuits get completely overloaded.
That is exactly what is happening, and it is a physiological reality.
And just to clarify that word for our listeners, physiological relates entirely to the way a living body functions.
Right. It's the actual chemical process, particularly involving our dopamine systems.
So it's not just a mood, it's cellular.
Yes. Extroverts need more dopamine hits from the outside world to feel rewarded. Introverts, however, are highly sensitive to dopamine. For them, too much of it feels overwhelming and exhausting rather than rewarding.
This completely reframes the entire conversation around personality types. It's not a lifestyle preference. It's a biological imperative.
It absolutely is.
But here is the massive systemic problem we face. Society, and particularly the modern corporate workplace, is almost entirely designed to cater to the extroverted biology.
Without a doubt.
We have open-plan offices with no acoustic privacy, constant on-the-fly brainstorming sessions, aggressive networking expectations.
And this relentless demand to be loud, visible, and instantly responsive.
And this leads directly to the hidden danger that Kano outlines so effectively in his paper.
Yes. Because society so heavily favors and rewards extroverts, introverts often feel forced to disguise themselves as extroverts just to survive the workday.
Or to advance in their careers.
Exactly. They put on a mask, they perform a high-energy extroversion that their biology is actively fighting against.
But playing a character for 8 to 10 hours a day must have a massive physiological cost.
It does, and the cost is severe. Kano explains that this constant acting, this daily suppression of their innate neurological baseline, forces the autonomic nervous system into a chronic state of tension.
So you are biologically fighting your own nature every single minute you are in that open plan office.
You are. And if this state of heightened tension becomes chronic, it goes far beyond just feeling tired. It can severely impact long-term health.
Wow.
It leads to profound psychological exhaustion, clinical anxiety, and real physical illness.
I was absolutely shocked when I read the statistics on this in our sources.
This SW25 presentation?
Yes, Nina Golder's presentation at the SWE25 conference, that's the Society of Women Engineers. She cited that roughly 40% of the general population are introverts.
40%, that is a huge number.
It is nearly half the workforce. And yet the way we have structured our professional world essentially forces almost half the population to biologically stress themselves, to actively fry their own nervous systems just to be deemed professional or team players.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at a massive systemic misallocation of human energy.
A misallocation, I like how you phrase that.
Well, think about it. We are asking brilliant, capable people to burn their finite battery power on performing a personality rather than allocating that energy to actually doing their jobs effectively or innovating.
Which transitions us into a really crucial area, because this act of faking it, this constant draining performance, leads directly into a very specific and dangerous type of workplace exhaustion.
We need to talk about emotional labor.
Exactly. Emotional labor and burnout, particularly how it impacts highly sensitive persons, or HSPs.
Yes, we have some fantastic, deeply empathetic insights here from Juri Misaki. She is a career consultant specifically specializing in helping HSPs navigate the workplace.
Could you quickly define what an HSP is for the listener?
Of course. Highly sensitive persons are individuals who process sensory and emotional data much more deeply and thoroughly due to a biological difference in their central nervous systems.
So they just notice more.
They notice everything. Subtle shifts in tone, micro-expressions, ambient tension in a room. And as Misaki points out, quoting the pioneering researcher Dr. Elaine Aron, because they process so much data, there is a constant, lingering potential for severe burnout for HSPs.
And the data she presents backs this up dramatically. Misaki references a Dutch study which found that a staggering 57% of HSPs have experienced burnout.
More than half.
It's wild. And we need to be clear about what burnout actually is. It isn't just feeling a bit tired on a Friday afternoon.
No, it's far more profound than that. As Misaki clarifies from her years of coaching experience, burnout happens when your will, your desire to do a good job, your sense of professional responsibility completely severs its connection from your actual physical and mental energy reserves.
So the brain says go, but the body says no.
Precisely. The will keeps pushing, pressing down on the accelerator, but the engine has entirely seized up.
And a huge driver of this engine seizure is this concept of emotional labor. We have a fascinating study in our stack from Okayama University that looks at student teachers to truly understand how destructive this can be.
Emotional labor is a brilliant term. It was originally coined by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild in the early 1980s.
How does she define it?
It is defined as the process of managing your own internal feelings and expressions in order to fulfill the emotional requirements of a job.
Okay, so it means you are actively managing your own emotions to create a specific, dictated emotional state in someone else.
Exactly, like making a customer feel welcome, a patient feel calm, or a student feel motivated.
Right, so A flight attendant has to project absolute calm and cheerful hospitality to make passengers feel safe, even if the flight attendant is personally terrified of turbulence.
Yes. Or a nurse having to project endless empathy even when they are physically exhausted.
Or a teacher projecting boundless enthusiasm to motivate a room full of teenagers. You are putting your emotions to work just as hard as a bricklayer puts their muscles to work. It is actual, exhausting labor.
The Okayama University study looked specifically at how student teachers handle this immense burden. What they found is a stark, fascinating contrast between novices and experienced professionals.
Oh, this was interesting. Experienced teachers view emotional labor as a strategic, external skill.
Right, they deploy it consciously as a tool, much like putting on a uniform.
But the novices, the student teachers in their first few weeks on the job, they don't have that distance.
They just force it.
They try to genuinely internally feel the emotion they are supposed to be projecting. If they're supposed to be happy and authoritative, they try to force their brain to actually feel happy and authoritative.
Even when they're inwardly terrified, exhausted, or deeply insecure.
And that internal clash, that massive gap between what you are forcing yourself to display and what you actually feel, is called emotional dissonance.
And that dissonance is incredibly damaging. When your internal feelings deeply clash with the external emotions you are required to display by your employer, it causes massive psychological stress.
The Okayama study showed this forced emotional dissonance led to a massive spike in depression, severe anxiety, and crippling mental fatigue amongst the student teachers.
Because if you are constantly forcing an emotion you don't naturally feel, your social battery doesn't just drain, it short circuits.
So if I'm listening to this and I identify as an introvert or an HSP, am I just doomed?
What do you mean?
Well, if 40% of us are introverts and a significant portion are highly sensitive, and the modern world absolutely demands emotional labor to earn a living, is it just a hopeless situation where we are destined to be exhausted forever?
Not at all. And this is where Juri Masaki's concept of the wavy line becomes incredibly empowering and practical.
The wavy line. I love this concept.
She explains that non-HSPs, or neurotypical extroverts, might have a relatively straight, predictable line of energy output. They can walk into the office and deliver a consistent, steady, 70% effort all day, every day, from 9 to 5.
Like a steady, reliable generator humming along in the background.
Exactly. But HSPs and introverts operate on a wavy line. They experience huge, soaring peaks of brilliant, high-quality, deeply insightful output.
During those peaks, they are absolute powerhouses.
But those peaks are inevitably followed by deep, necessary troughs where they have absolutely no energy left. They need to crash to process the massive amount of data they just took in and synthesized.
The trap, then, is that HSPs look around the office at the straight-line people and think, something is wrong with me. I should be able to do that.
Yes, and they try to force their wavy line to be straight. They try to sustain the peak performance permanently, denying the trough, which leads straight to that 57% burnout rate.
That is precisely the danger. So what is the solution?
The trick, Misaki argues, is radical acceptance. You have to accept the wave instead of fighting it. You have to deeply understand your own output style.
So acknowledging that when you are at a peak, you might produce better, more innovative work in 2 hours than a straight-line person produces in 2 entire days.
Yes. But when you hit the trough, you have to accept that the battery is dead. You cannot force it. You have to step back and recharge without guilt.
Which brings us to what I think is perhaps the most painful, relatable part of this whole process.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
The battery is dead.
Mm.
You've hit the bottom of the wavy line. You finally managed to escape the crowded social event or the demanding office, and you shut your front door. What happens next?
Usually we don't just rest.
Exactly. We make it infinitely worse by overthinking.
Ah, yes. The psychological aftermath. This is where the physical depletion turns into mental torture.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because for an introvert, the socializing doesn't actually end when you leave the party or log off the Zoom call.
Not at all.
Your physical body has left the room, but your brain keeps burning battery power by endlessly replaying the event.
In Japan, they have a brilliant specific term for this, discussed in both an Ameblo post by Natural Harmony and a note article by a writer named Oshiro.
What's the term?
It's called Hitori Hansekai, which translates to the solo reflectum meeting.
It is a deeply relatable, albeit entirely torturous concept. You are physically alone in your safe space, but mentally, you are still trapped in that crowded room, cross-examining yourself.
Writer Oshiro describes the brutal reality of this aftermath perfectly. You are lying awake in bed at 2 a.m., staring blankly at the ceiling, forensically analyzing every single minor interaction you had that evening.
You worry about a perceived faux pas. You think, why on earth did I say that?
Or, do I sound stupid when I brought up that article? Should I have laughed louder at my boss's joke? Did they think I was being rude?
And this leads us to a crucial psychological term, rumination.
Yes, rumination.
Just to define that for our listeners with B2 to C1 English. Rumination is the habit of thinking deeply and continuously about negative things. It's not problem solving, it's a cyclical trap.
It's like a cow chewing its cud, just endlessly bringing the exact same negative thoughts back up to chew on them again and again without ever finding a resolution.
And Oshiro points out just how destructive this rumination is to our recovery. If we think of our energy like a psychological HP gauge in a video game,
Right.
the gauge is already empty from the event itself. But the rumination acts like a poison status effect. It continually drains your health even after the battle is completely over.
It gets so bad, the sources note, that you become terrified to even look at your phone.
Oh, absolutely. You refuse to open messaging apps like Line or WhatsApp the next day out of a profound fear that someone is angry with you.
Or that opening the app will force you to engage again. You isolate yourself entirely out of shame and exhaustion.
The Natural Harmony post echoes this perfectly. You deplete your battery interacting with the world, and then you apply a massive negative multiplier to your own energy levels by conducting this aggressive solo reflection meeting.
Filled with self-disgust and unwarranted criticism, it is a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle.
So how on earth do we break it? How do we adjourn the solo reflection meeting?
I think we have to gently remind the listener of writer Oshiro's hilarious but profoundly accurate and liberating advice.
I love this part.
Oshiro says essentially, stop it. It was just a drinking party. No one remembers what you said.
Right. Everyone else was either drunk, entirely focused on their own insecurities, or just thinking about what they're going to eat for breakfast.
I genuinely love this quote from the source. Oshiro says you could probably pull off your boss's wig at a party and still be mostly fine the next day.
It's so true. People are far less observant than we fear.
It's a wonderful, deeply necessary bit of perspective. The reality is, what we are suffering from in those moments is the spotlight effect, the cognitive bias, where we firmly believe that everyone is paying strict judgmental attention to our every move and word.
And they aren't. They really, truly weren't.
Letting go of that illusion, realizing that you are a background character in most people's lives, is the very first step to stopping the solo reflection meeting and allowing the brain to power down.
Okay, so let's say we've done that. We've acknowledged our weighty line, the battery is completely dead, and we've managed to stop ruminating and beating ourselves up about a slightly awkward goodbye at the door.
Right.
Now what? How do we actually recharge this battery effectively? Because it turns out, looking at our medical sources, it's not just about going to sleep for 10 hours.
This is a crucial distinction that most people miss entirely. We constantly conflate the idea of resting with the act of doing absolutely nothing.
But as we see in the materials from Eisai Pharmacy, specifically looking at Dr. Hideki Kitano's 7 rest models, simply stopping is only one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Dr. Kitano powerfully differentiates between passive rest and active rest.
Passive rest is what we intuitively default to, right?
Yeah.
Sleeping, lying motionless on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, doing absolutely zero.
And that is necessary, of course. Sleep is the biological foundation of recovery. But for the kind of severe social and mental depletion we are talking about, passive rest is often not enough to fully restore the battery.
You can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up feeling socially exhausted.
This is where the concept of active rest becomes vital. Active rest involves taking on a light, enjoyable, entirely self-chosen cognitive or physical load.
So it's about engaging the brain or the body in a way that is distinctly different from the stressor that drained you in the first place.
You are changing the channel, not just turning off the television.
Writer Oshiro gives some fantastic, highly practical examples of active rest in their article. One of my absolute favorites is the suggestion of cooking complex, intricate meals.
Cooking is a perfect textbook example of active rest. Why does it work so well? Because it requires immediate sensory focus.
Right. If you are finely chopping an onion, monitoring the heat of a pan, and following a complex multi-step recipe, your working memory is entirely occupied.
You physically cannot simultaneously ruminate on what you said to your colleague at the pub. It anchors your attention violently in the present moment, in the sensory experience of smell, taste, sound, and touch.
It forcefully stops the overthinking engine, by giving it a different, pleasant task.
I love that. It essentially forces mindfulness through action. And this completely echoes another brilliant source in our stack, a paper from the International Journal of Indian Psychology on yoga and mindfulness.
Yes, that paper discusses using mindfulness practices to cultivate calm responses to a crisis.
Now, obviously, a loud networking event or a chaotic family dinner might not be a global existential pandemic.
But to an introvert's highly aroused nervous system, the sensory overload genuinely feels like a minor biological crisis.
Anchoring yourself in the present moment, whether through formal yoga, deep breathing exercises, or just making a really complicated, deeply satisfying lasagna, helps the autonomic nervous system realize the threat has passed and begin the recovery phase.
Akiro also mentions other active rest methods, like dedicating time to tending to houseplants, or even doing the Gujo Odori dance.
Which is a traditional, repetitive Japanese dance. You just do it alone in your living room. The key underlying principle is that the activity must be physical, it must be gently engaging, and it must be done entirely for yourself with no external audience or expectations.
We also pulled some incredibly raw, honest advice from the Reddit community for this deep dive, specifically looking at the self-improvement and introvert subreddits.
These aren't clinical psychologists. These are real people in the trenches sharing their daily survival tactics.
The Reddit threads are highly illuminating because they deal with the immediate tactical triage of a draining situation, rather than just the post-event recovery.
One user brought up the absolute vital importance of micro breaks. When you are at an event and you feel the battery plummeting, you feel that agitation starting to build, you don't have to rigidly endure it until you completely collapse.
You can and should excuse yourself to the bathroom for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, I love this advice. Just go to a bathroom cubicle, lock the door, and breathe. Look at your phone, stare at the back of the door, or just close your eyes.
You are just removing the relentless sensory input for a quarter of an hour. It acts like a portable power bank.
It won't fully charge your battery back to 100%, but it gives you just enough juice to survive the rest of the evening without snapping at anyone.
Another fantastic point raised in the Reddit sources, which aligns perfectly with Dr. Kitano's medical models, is the desperate need to break physical stagnation. And this brings us to an important concept: overcoming sedentary states.
Right. And to explain that vocabulary word, a sedentary state means spending a vast amount of time seated or physically inactive.
Like sitting rigidly at an office desk all day, or being trapped in a booth at a loud pub for 4 hours. Your body is still, but your mind is racing.
Exactly. Sometimes, if you are profoundly mentally exhausted from socializing while remaining physically sedentary, the absolute worst thing you can do is go home and sit on another sofa.
So what's the alternative?
The best recharge is physical movement in an entirely different environment. Writer Oshiro specifically suggests a walk by a river.
The goal isn't vigorous exercise, is it?
No, it's about looking at the vast sky, feeling the ambient air, and physically breaking the rigid, clenched posture of social tension. Moving the body helps move the stagnant mental energy.
So we have a great toolkit for recovery: active rest, forced mindfulness, tactical micro breaks, and breaking sedentary cycles. These are brilliant tools for when the battery is dead or dying.
But surely if we want to thrive, preventing the battery from draining completely in the first place is even better.
Absolutely. Recovery is reactive. Prevention is proactive. And prevention requires mastering a concept that many introverts, and especially highly sensitive persons, struggle with profoundly, often due to a desire to be helpful and accommodating: boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yes. Okay, let's unpack this concept of boundaries, because I think a massive portion of the population completely misunderstands what a boundary actually is and how it functions.
We have an excellent clarifying piece from Kokoro Clinic that reframes this entire concept beautifully.
The misunderstanding is rampant. Many people intuitively picture a boundary as a massive, impenetrable, aggressive brick wall.
They think setting a boundary means shutting people out entirely, being rude, being uncooperative, or being inherently selfish.
But the Kokoro Clinic article uses a much more accurate and helpful metaphor. Boundaries are not brick walls. They are like the white lines painted on a pavement or road.
I absolutely love that visual image. Think about a busy road. The white line doesn't aggressively stop anyone from walking or driving.
It simply provides a clear, universally understood guide. It shows exactly where the pedestrian path ends and where the fast-moving cycle lane begins.
It keeps everyone safe, sets clear expectations, and prevents disastrous collisions. You aren't building a hostile wall to keep your colleagues away. You are just clearly marking your operational lane.
And the beauty of the clinic's approach is that they provide 3 highly actionable professional steps for drawing these white lines in your relationships.
Step 1 is crucial. Separate facts from emotions.
Right. If you are overwhelmed at work, instead of saying, "You are stressing me out by constantly giving me too much work," which is highly emotional, accusatory, and likely to cause the other person to become defensive,
You stick to the pure facts. You say, this is the 3rd urgent project assigned to me today, and looking at my schedule, I only have the time capacity to complete 2 to a high standard.
you are simply stating the mathematical fact of your capacity.
Step 2, propose instead of demanding. Instead of putting up a brick wall and saying, I refuse to do this, you frame the boundary as a collaborative proposal.
I propose we push the deadline for Project A to next Wednesday so I can give my full focus to Project B today.
It invites a conversation and positions you as a problem solver rather than creating a conflict.
And step 3, clarify deadlines and scope. Be incredibly, almost painfully specific about what you will do and when you will do it.
I will review these documents thoroughly by 5 p.m. tomorrow, but please note I will not be available for follow-up calls after 6 p.m.
You are drawing the white line clearly on the pavement.
But perhaps the most powerful tool the clinic suggests, and I think this is the ultimate boundary tool for an introvert whose battery is rapidly draining in real time, is the incredibly simple act of delaying a response.
Yes. Having the courage to use the phrase, "I will take this back and reply tomorrow," or "Let me check my schedule and get back to you by the end of the day."
Introverts, because they process things deeply, often feel immense, crushing pressure to respond instantly in fast-paced conversations, or to reply to emails within 3 minutes.
This artificial urgency heavily spikes their neocortical arousal levels and drains their energy tank astonishingly fast.
Giving yourself explicit permission to pause, to not have the perfect answer immediately on the tip of your tongue, protects your battery immensely.
But wait, let me push back on this quite strongly, because I know what a lot of listeners in high-pressure corporate jobs are thinking.
Go ahead.
Even delaying a response just procrastinating? If you work in a fast-paced agency or a high-stakes startup and your boss asks you a question and you say, "I'll reply tomorrow," aren't you just going to get sacked?
I completely sympathize with that fear, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, delaying a response in this manner is the exact opposite of procrastination.
How so?
It is meticulous, highly strategic energy management. And to defend this, we have to tie it perfectly back to Jiro Misaki's coaching concepts for HSPs.
Right, Misaki.
Misaki talks about the absolute necessity of learning to raise your unit price.
Raise your unit price. I have to admit that sounds very corporate and slightly mercenary.
Right.
What does she actually mean by that in the context of psychological energy?
It's a brilliant economic metaphor for personal energy. Raising your unit price means maximizing the sheer value of your output during your energetic peaks.
Remember the wavy line we discussed earlier?
Yes, exactly. When an HSP or an introvert is well-rested, unbothered, and deep in their focused flow state, they can produce incredibly high-quality, deeply considered innovative work.
Because the quality is so high, their unit price, the actual value of 1 hour of their dedicated time, is exceptionally high.
Okay, now consider the alternative. If you succumb to the pressure of artificial urgency and you constantly respond instantly to every minor query, ping, and email while your battery is low and you are highly stressed, you are delivering rushed, low-quality, shallow work.
Your unit price drops dramatically. You become a cheap commodity of quick, half-baked answers.
But if you confidently set a boundary to say, I need time to review this, I will reply tomorrow morning, you fiercely protect your energy. You wait until you are back at a peak on your wavy line.
Then, the next morning, you deliver a brilliant, comprehensive, highly valuable response that actually solves the core problem.
Because you consistently deliver such high value, you earn the professional capital and the right to step back and rest without guilt.
Ah, that is a massive paradigm shift. So delaying the response isn't avoiding the work, it's ensuring that when you do the work, you are operating at maximum cognitive capacity.
You are protecting your neurological reserves so you can deliver exceptional quality when it actually matters, rather than mediocre speed all the time.
It's the difference between giving your team 10 rushed, stressed, slightly irritable half-answers scattered throughout a chaotic Tuesday versus giving them one perfectly crafted, definitive, strategic answer on Wednesday morning.
Precisely. You are actively training the people around you to expect deep quality from you, rather than shallow immediacy. And enforcing that boundary is what ultimately saves your social battery from death by 1,000 cuts.
This is incredibly empowering on an individual level. It gives you a roadmap for survival, but it also highlights a massive, glaring structural issue.
Yes.
If we as individuals have to work this hard to protect our energy, to meticulously draw white lines, to schedule active rest, and to manage our unit price, it's because we are living and working in an economic world fundamentally built for and by extroverts.
That is undeniably true.
So if we manage to master our own internal boundaries, how can we look outward? How can we reshape the actual business world to fit us better, rather than constantly twisting ourselves into knots to fit the extrovert mold?
This is exactly where we return to Masaji Kano's deeply researched paper, because he doesn't just diagnose the biological problem, he proposes profound structural solutions.
He explores new, and in some cases, ancient economic and organizational models that perfectly suit the introverted disposition rather than punishing it.
The first major alternative he mentions is the concept of Buddhist economics.
Now, when we usually think of economics in the West, we associate it with maximizing profit at all costs, endless quarter-on-quarter growth, and aggressive, cutthroat competition.
It is the ultimate extrovert playground where the loudest and most aggressive win.
But Buddhist economics flips that entire paradigm completely on its head.
It does, and it's a beautifully elegant shift. The core driving motto of Buddhist economics is being content with less and actively minimizing self-interest.
It places the highest value on sustainability, human well-being, and reducing suffering, prioritizing those elements over the sheer, blind accumulation of material wealth and market dominance.
For an introvert who is chronically exhausted by the relentless, noisy, competitive rat race of traditional capitalism, the idea of an economic model built fundamentally on the concept of enough rather than the pursuit of more is like taking a deep, cleansing breath of fresh air.
It aligns perfectly with their natural biological inclination away from aggressive, highly stimulated competition.
Moving from the macroeconomy to practical business creation, Kano also introduces a brilliant, highly pragmatic concept for introverted entrepreneurs called effectuation.
Yes, effectuation. I found this part of the research fascinating because the traditional startup business model, the one we see glorified in media, is exhausting just to read about.
It usually involves setting a massive, incredibly risky, visionary goal, pitching aggressively to venture capitalists, and trying to violently conquer a market.
Effectuation offers a completely different, much quieter path based on a few key grounding principles.
The first of those is the bird in hand principle. Traditional extroverted business strategy says dream up a massive new goal and then hustle aggressively to find the external means and money to achieve it.
But the bird in hand principle says the exact opposite. Look closely at the means you already have right now.
Who you are, what specific knowledge you possess, and who is already in your close network, and quietly create something new out of that existing material.
It's highly practical, low friction, and internally focused. This suits the introspective, analytical nature of introverts perfectly. You aren't desperately chasing external validation or exhausting yourself networking for funds. You are building quietly and steadily with what you already securely hold.
Let me give a hypothetical example of this to make it concrete. An extrovert wants to start a restaurant. They might borrow £1 million, rent a massive high street location, and throw a huge stressful launch party hoping it works out.
An introvert using the bird in hand principle might say, well, I know how to bake incredible sourdough, and I have a quiet kitchen. I'll start by just baking 10 loaves a week and selling them to my neighbors.
It's manageable, it doesn't fry their nervous system, and the second principle of effectuation is even better for the naturally risk-averse introvert, the affordable loss principle.
When starting a venture, traditional aggressive advice is to calculate the expected massive financial return and risk absolutely everything, your savings, your house, your sanity, for the chance to get it.
The affordable loss principle, however, dictates: calculate exactly what you are comfortably willing to lose, whether that's a small amount of money or a few hours a week, and only risk that specific amount.
It completely minimizes the anxiety of catastrophic failure. It allows an introvert to experiment, innovate, and build a business gradually without constantly triggering their nervous system with massive existential financial panic.
It's a completely different way of operating in the world, proving you don't need to be a loud risk-taker to create value. And this quieter, more deliberate approach extends to how we organize companies internally, too. Kano talks at length about teal organizations.
Teal organizations represent a massive, necessary paradigm shift in management theory.
Instead of rigid, traditional, hierarchical, top-down power structures, which often require leaders to be loud, aggressive, and highly dominant to maintain control, teal organizations are deliberately flat.
They rely entirely on self-management, individual wholeness, and an evolutionary shared purpose.
In a teal organization, the hierarchy is removed. You are actively encouraged to bring your whole authentic self to work.
You don't have to put on that fake alpha extrovert persona we talked about earlier just to get your ideas heard by upper management, because there is no upper management in the traditional sense. Authentic, quiet leadership absolutely thrives in this environment.
And this brings us to an important realization about the modern working world. While traditional, highly extrovert-friendly corporate structures are currently the dominant force, they are the standard everywhere. These new models, like teal organizations, effectuation, and Buddhist economics, offer a vital sanctuary.
They are living proof that you do not need to be loud, aggressive, or constantly stimulated to be highly effective and successful.
And this ties beautifully into the final piece of our puzzle today, the presentation by Nina Golder at this SWE25 conference. Golder is a highly successful executive, an engineer, and a proud, self-proclaimed introvert.
She introduced a highly practical framework for introverts navigating the workplace, which she calls the ACT framework.
ACT, Acknowledge, Captivate, Transform. It is a roadmap for quiet power.
Let's break that down. A is acknowledge. Acknowledge your introverted traits, don't hide them or feel ashamed of them.
Recognize that your capacity for deep, uninterrupted thinking, your meticulous attention to detail, and your ability to truly listen rather than just waiting to speak are massive professional superpowers, not deficits.
C is captivate. Captivate your audiences by enhancing your communication entirely on your own terms. You do not have to be the loudest, most dominant person in the meeting room.
You can be the quiet person who listens intently, synthesizes the chaos, and sends the most brilliant, insightful follow-up analysis an hour later.
And finally, T, transform and enhance your visibility with an authentic voice. Authentic is the absolute key word there. When you stop expending all your battery power on faking extroversion, your true competence finally has the energy to shine through.
As Golder astutely notes, if 50% of the brilliant ideas in a room are constantly dampened simply because they belong to quieter, more contemplative voices, the world is missing out on massive, world-changing solutions.
We desperately need the quiet voices to be heard, precisely because they have thought deeply before speaking.
It is an incredibly empowering message. It aligns perfectly with the underlying philosophy in Cheryl M. Bradshaw's workbook on resilience that we included in our stack today.
True resilience isn't about hardening yourself into an unfeeling wall or violently forcing your biology to mimic an extrovert.
True resilience is about adapting intelligently to change, deeply understanding your own specific stress responses and arousal levels, and finding immense, unshakable strength in your authentic self.
It is about working harmoniously with your innate neurological code rather than desperately, exhaustingly trying to rewrite it.
It represents a fundamental shift in perspective. It's a shift from constantly trying to fix yourself to finally seeking to deeply understand yourself. Once you understand the underlying physiological mechanics of your social battery, you can stop apologizing for it.
You can stop feeling guilty about it and start managing it like the incredibly valuable, finite resource it truly is.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, we have covered a truly massive amount of ground in this deep dive today. Let's do a quick recap to pull it all together.
Sounds good.
We started by learning that the social battery is not just a clever metaphor. It is a real, measurable, physiological phenomenon tied directly to neocortical arousal and dopamine sensitivity.
We've seen exactly how forcing ourselves to fake it as extroverts and trapping ourselves in endless, toxic solo reflection meetings late at night drains us to the absolute point of burnout.
But crucially, we didn't just diagnose the problem, we found the solutions. We discussed the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of active rest, finding engaging, mindful tasks like cooking or walking to anchor our racing nervous systems.
We learned how to draw firm, clear, white lines of boundaries to protect our energy, allowing us to strategically delay responses, raise our unit price, and deliver truly high-value work.
And finally, we zoomed all the way out to look at the macro picture, seeing how new economic models, from the gentle principles of Buddhist economics and effectuation to the flat structures of teal organizations, are proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that quiet power, authentic leadership, and careful energy management are not just viable alternatives. They might actually be highly superior ways to operate in the modern world.
Indeed.
So what does this all mean for you?
Well, I think it raises one final, highly provocative thought to leave you with. We live in a global society that is becoming increasingly unpredictable, incredibly complex, and relentlessly chaotic. Historically, we have almost always rewarded the loud, risk-taking, aggressively confident extrovert model of leadership. We assumed the loudest person knew the best way forward. But in a highly volatile, fragile world, perhaps that loud, aggressive approach is no longer the safest or the smartest bet. What if the future of genuine innovation, the future of sustainable, empathetic leadership, actually relies entirely on those who are meticulously careful with their energy? Those who quietly calculate affordable losses, who listen deeply and synthesize before ever speaking, and who know exactly when it is necessary to step back, draw a boundary, and recharge.
That is a truly fascinating thought to leave on. The quiet ones might just be the exact people equipped to build a sustainable, thoughtful future for all of us. So if you are listening to this right now and feeling even a little bit drained, we warmly, actively encourage you to go and take a well-deserved, completely guilt-free break. Put your phone in a drawer, maybe go chop some vegetables for a complex recipe, or take a long, slow walk by the river. Remember, protecting your energy isn't selfish, and it isn't lazy. It is quite literally the most productive, essential thing you can do today. So until next time, please don't feel bad about staring at that blank wall for a bit. You aren't doing nothing. You're just recharging the battery.